last episode, I looked to see if there was a clear connection between Suge Knight and the alleged suspects in the two theories. There definitely was a connection between Suge and Poochie, the suspect in the Greg Kading theory. But there really wasn't a connection between Suge Knight and David Mack or Rafael Perez in the Russell Poole theory. But as I mentioned, Russell Poole did rely on one other thing to push his idea of a plot between Suge and Mack and Perez. These were statements collected from various informants. Greg Kading also relied on informant statements for his theory. So in this episode, I'll look at the key informant statements used in both theories and compare them to see which ones make sense and which ones are credible. Part 2. Informant statements. When Biggie was killed, many people reached out to police with possible information on what happened. Quite often, the information is useless or even just a lie because it comes from informants or inmates hoping to do a deal with police. But police still look into these claims. Kelly Cooper was one of the first police officers assigned to the murder of Biggie. He explained this in the Murder App documentary.
We were getting phone calls for all kind of inmates who had all the answers to everything. They witnessed all the days in prison, but they knew everything. I don't care if the informers, the inmates, or whatever, they got access to the media. And a big case like this, everybody's watching this. So now you got to run over there and interview this inmate who just got the information from the media. So you run in circles. But once you realize what he said is garbage, it's garbage. Just let it go. You don't pursue garbage. You're wasting your time.
Robert Ladd, who was in the gang unit at Compton PD, confirms this practice as well.
Okay, because I've interviewed hundreds of informants. That's all I did my whole career is talk to informant. And these guys are savory characters. They're gangsters. They're dope dealers. They're not going to tell you how. 3/4 of what they tell you is not going to be the truth, but it's that one part that they tell you the truth. It's my job to go out and investigate and see if he's telling the truth or not. You know what I'm saying?
One statement from a known informant revolved around the murder of a bounty hunter Bloods gang member named William Ratcliff. It was suggested that in 1995, Rat, as he was known, and his associates confronted Suge on 2 occasions about giving him a record deal. In one of these occasions, Rat's gang and Suge's gang got into a fight. The informant claimed a month later he was at the death row studio when Poochie came and was asked by Suge to take care of Rat. Not long after this, Rat was shot and killed. The same informant also said that in 1993, a Compton drug dealer named Bruce Richardson got into a fight with Suge's crew, and Richardson, who was rumored to be skilled at karate, supposedly knocked out Suge and fellow gang member Buntry. 2 weeks later, Bruce Richardson was shot and killed in his home. Apparently, Poochie was responsible for his murder too, at Suge's request. This doesn't prove anything conclusively, but shows 2 occasions in which claims are made about Poochie killing people that Suge had an issue with. There was also a letter from prison in 2004 by a Bloods gang member, Roderick Reed, to known FBI informant Kevin Hackey, in which he mentions knowing that Poochie killed Biggie. Again, this is just one person's claim with no solid evidence to confirm it. But what makes this claim more believable is that Roderick Reed was charged with a crime alongside one of Suge's gang member associates named George Williams, seen here. This shows a bond between Reed and Williams, who was clearly close to Suge and had a reputation as one of Suge's hard men, along with Poochie. Knowing there is a direct connection there to Suge gives these claims much more credibility. These statements form part of Greg Kading's theory and show the nature of the connection between Suge and Poochie as his hitman. To me, the coincidence that Suge had issues with 2 people and shortly after they are killed fuels the idea that he had a hitman in his crew, and the letter from someone else connected to his crew gives weight to the claim that Poochie was the hitman. The next statement in the Greg Kading theory, in my opinion, is the best information in the whole case. This is the only credible statement in which an informant not only admitted knowledge of Suge and Poochie's involvement in Biggie's death, but also an admission to being involved in the murder themselves. This informant was a woman police referred to as Teresa Swan. She was the mother of one of Suge Knight's children, and her name came on the radar in relation to Suge Knight's bankruptcy case, in which Suge attempted to transfer death row assets into her name. Teresa Swan was found to have involvement in other fraud cases involving fake IDs being used to obtain fraudulent finance for cars. Police first met with her in March 2009, and when pressed about her knowledge of Biggie's death, she broke down and confessed. The fear that they knew her involvement and what would happen to her children was too much for her. In her official statement in May 2009, she was shown a fake confession letter from Poochie, written by the Taskforce, explaining how and where he killed Biggie and who had contracted him to do so. Teresa Swan's name was part of this letter, and when she read it, she confirmed the story to be true. By this time, Poochie was dead, having been shot multiple times back in 2003. But how did Suge organize the murder with Teresa Swan, given that Suge was in jail at the time? Teresa Swan told police that Suge's lawyer named her as a legal assistant working for his legal team, which allowed her to visit the prison and speak with Suge unsupervised. This is how she was instructed to contact Poochie and ask him to murder Biggie in exchange for a payment of $25,000. It's believed Teresa Swan met up with Poochie and discussed the murder with him. After the murder, she met up with Poochie again, where he was paid $9,000, and then a third time where he was paid $4,000 a few weeks later. It is believed that Teresa Swan kept the remaining $12,000 for her part. Reggie Wright Jr. made a statement that supported this in the Murder Rap documentary, since he was running Death Row Records for Suge at the time, while Suge was in jail.
The only thing about that ever made me raise any type of eyebrows regarding the possibility of someone being involved in the Biggie assassination would be a request from Norris Anderson, who was the general manager of the company at the time, to think of a way, or did I know of a way, to get $25,000 of cash to one of Suge's female friends.
Also, as mentioned in the last episode, both Suge Knight and Poochie owned mid-90s model Chevy Impalas. It was believed that Suge had purchased one for Poochie when he bought one of his own.
There were rumored to be that Suge and he bought an Impala at George Chevrolet in Bellflower, California at the same time.
Teresa Swan informed police that Poochie's Impala appeared to have been painted when she met him after the shooting to make payment. Is that why a green-coloured Impala, like the one reported the night of the murder, was seen parked here at a body shop where Suge had his cars customized? Maybe, or maybe it's just a coincidence. Teresa Swan also revealed that she was at the Vibe party where Biggie was shot. However, she said she did not see Poochie there. Keefe D mentioned in his interview with the Taskforce that there was a female that was lurking around Biggie at the Vibe party.
And those were the two girls that you talked about
at the
being in the Vibe party that night and, and getting close to Puffy and Biggie, is that right?
All that, yeah. It was one to set that shit up. Then the fire marshal said they was gonna close the place. Blood was out there. It was ready, dog.
Another witness who was hanging with Biggie in LA and was also at the Vibe party said a female asked him which car was Biggie's when they were leaving. It has been suggested that this woman acted as a spotter for Poochie that night, and the woman could have been Teresa Swan, but none of that has ever been confirmed. So, to me, the statement from Teresa Swan is extremely credible. Not only does she claim knowledge of the murder, but she implicates herself in the murder and confirmed the story presented to her in a fake confession letter to be true. This shows that Greg Kading's theory about the Biggie murder is valid, and the informant statements he's relying on are holding up. But what about the informant statements Russell Poole relied on? Well, the first story was from an inmate named Waymond Anderson. He was a minor pop star who was jailed for life after an arson fire that killed a person in 1993. It's important to note that he was arrested in 94 and has been in jail ever since. That's way before Biggie's murder. In April 1997, a month after the shooting, Anderson claimed he was in a holding tank with Suge for only half an hour, waiting to go to court when Suge confessed that he had killed Biggie. Police gave Anderson a polygraph test, which he failed, and when they checked his story with the jail, they found that he was never in the holding tank at the same time as Suge. So Anderson's statement was quickly proven to be a lie. If you recall in the last episode, we didn't really touch on David Mack's friend Amir Muhammad, aka Harry Billups. Poole's theory is that the actual shooter was Amir Muhammad. So how did he come across Amir Muhammad to think this? Well, Russell Poole relied heavily on a statement by known informant Psycho Mike, aka Michael Robinson, who was also an inmate, to connect Amir Muhammad to his theory. Poole claims that when Robinson was interviewed in July 1997 by Detective Ted Ball and Sergeant Richard Valdemar, he revealed the shooter was a guy called Amir Muhammad. Firstly, Robinson claims he knows the killer.
Hey, do you know this man?
Yes.
The man you're describing here
Yes.
is the killer.
Yes.
How long would you say you have known this man?
About 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer, 12.
But then he can't even remember the guy's name. The detective has to remind him of what he said earlier.
Okay, who's the dude? Who are you talking about?
The dude name is Abraham. I can't say his name. It's Arab name.
Okay, you know him as Abraham?
Abraham, or I told you the name yesterday. The name Arab name.
Okay, you told me yesterday the name of
Amir.
Amir?
Yeah, Amir or Amir. It's an Arab name.
Ashmir or Amir.
Yeah.
So at the start of the interview, he's already sounding like he doesn't know what he's talking about. Because how do you know someone for 10 years, but you still don't know their name? Even the description he gives is inaccurate.
Have you ever seen him?
Yes.
What's he described as?
About 6'1", maybe 6'2".
Male, black, white?
Black.
How much does he weigh?
So about 220, 230.
The height and weight are incorrect, but not dramatically wrong. However, the age was significantly wrong.
About how old is he?
I said about 29, 30.
Amir Muhammad was 37 at the time of his death. The detective even asks him if he knows the guy's non-Muslim name.
Do you know what they used to call him when he was a Southside?
Might be Kenny or Kiki or something like that. I forgot. Kiki or something like that.
He's then asked where the guy lives, and note, the detective refers to the person as a Southsider.
Yeah, well, I don't know exactly where it is. I know the house is out there. He'd be over there off of Greenleaf and off of Johnson.
That's because Robinson is describing the Southside Crips neighborhood, which is where Keefe D is from. So now, it just sounds like he's talking about a completely different person, Keefe D, which sounds like Kiki, Kenny. Which is ridiculous because we all know that Keefe D and the Southside Crips were cool with Puff and Biggie. Keefe D admitted on Vlad TV that Puff would give them tickets to events, so the Bad Boy crew would have Southside Crips around them when they were in LA for protection. So Keefe D certainly had no problem with Biggie. But then it gets even worse for Robinson. He's asked about the shooting.
How was Biggie killed?
I heard somebody just walk by and shot him in his truck 5 or 6 times through the door of the truck or something.
How was he killed?
Just heard he shot, they went by shot by with a machine gun or something.
Shot?
Shot.
What caliber gun?
I heard a machine gun. Could have been a Woody or a Tech 9, I don't know. And so he was shot in his own machine gun.
Which is incorrect. Biggie was shot with a pistol.
How did the guy get away? Did you ever hear anything about that?
They ran around the corner and got in a limo or a truck or something, drove off him.
Incorrect again. As we know, it was a drive-by shooting, and we know the car the shooter used was a sedan, not a limo or a truck. On top of that, when he's asked about the car this person normally drives, Robinson gets undone again.
Do you know what kind of car that this Amir drives?
White stretch limo.
Now think back, once you think back, Michael, if there's any specific car that anybody that you've talked to has told you that the guy got into? Or are you just thinking that it might be a limo because you know this Amir has a limo?
I'm thinking it might be a limo because do have a limo.
There was a known figure at the time in Compton who drove around in a fancy white car. It was a white Rolls Royce, not a limo, but still something notably fancy. This person was known as Stutterbox, and Michael Robinson even mentioned Stutterbox in this interview.
Stutterbox, but I told him yesterday.
And?
Well, Stutterbox could have been there. Stutterbox and
So the fact he's now describing the shooter as being another different person, Stutterbox, clearly shows that Michael Robinson doesn't know a thing. He's clearly heard stories about different people and he's mashed it all together and is trying to sell a story to the police. This becomes pretty clear when he tells the detective that he's illiterate and can't remember things well because he never wrote them down.
I can try to remember everything was being said because I don't remember everything exactly because I don't read and write. It's not, I'm telling you his name yesterday. I can't, I don't read right, so.
This is the nail in the coffin for Michael Robinson, because if you know this person and the story of what he did, why would you need to write any of this stuff down? It's a slip-up that basically confirms he's just trying to remember random stories he's heard in prison. Now, what's important to note is that Robinson never says the person's last name, nor does he ever mention the name Muhammad. But as it turns out, Stutterbox had an alias and was also known as Amir Muhammad. You can clearly see that Stutterbox Amir Muhammad is not the same person as David Mack's friend Amir Muhammad, aka Harry Billups. But from this very poor interview by Michael Robinson, when taking those bits on their own, completely out of context, Russell Poole has come up with an informant who knows the shooter of Biggie and describes him as someone called Amir Muhammad. But how does Poole link Amir Muhammad with Suge and Mack or Perez? Well, as I mentioned in the last episode, David Mack and Amir Muhammad were friends from college, and Muhammad came to visit Mack in prison after Mack got arrested for the bank robbery. This connection was made from a visitor sign-in sheet that Mack's friend Amir Muhammad filled and signed when he visited the prison. You can see it here. Amir Muhammad used his real name, real address, real driver's license number, but the only thing that is wrong is his social security number, which by his own admission in depositions he admitted he intentionally didn't write the correct social security number, because as a mortgage broker, he knows the sensitivity of not exposing your social security number for fraud reasons. So given the details on the sign-in sheet can be seen by anybody who visits the prison, he didn't want his social security number being on display, which, to be fair to Amir Muhammad, is quite valid. There are many people that claim, well no, he lied and wrote fake details on the sign-in sheet. But well, if he was going to provide fake details on the signing sheet, why would he provide just one detail that's incorrect but give every other detail that was correct? Wouldn't he lie about his address, his driver's license number as well, if he was trying to hide his identity? There was another known informant by the name of Mario Hammond who gave a statement to Detective Fred Miller in 1998, claiming that he had become friends with Suge in prison after he saved Suge from an attack that was supposedly ordered by Harry O. Hammond claims he built trust with Suge to the point that Suge told him he had ordered the hit on Biggie. Another informant who was looked into was Kenneth Boagni. He was interviewed multiple times between the year 2000 and 2001. He claimed he was locked up with Rafael Perez and that Perez told him of his involvement in the murder of Biggie with David Mack and Suge Knight. He also claimed that the money Mack stole in the bank robbery was stolen to pay Amir Muhammad for his part in the murder. This was never proven, and the money David Mack got from the bank robbery has never been found either. The last key informant was Kevin Hackey, who gave a sworn declaration in June 2004. He was a Compton Unified School District officer who also worked security at Death Row Records. He also was an informant to the FBI at that time. Kevin Hackey claimed in his declaration that David Mack also worked security and had access to Death Row functions since he was a covert agent for Death Row. So fast forward to 2005. Depositions are taken from these key informants as part of the lawsuit by Biggie's family against the LAPD. Here is where Russell Poole's informants all come undone. Kevin Hackey, who was the key informant, did not want to give testimony, telling reporters that medication he had taken had made him lose his memory. However, a warrant was issued to compel him to testify. On the stand, he denied all of his claims about David Mack in his 2004 declaration, including Mack working security for Death Row as a covert agent and being at Death Row functions. This basically rules out David Mack's connection to Suge Knight and Death Row Records. Kenneth Boagni. He refused to be deposed in 2005. He claimed he feared for his life and the safety of his family and did not make a deposition, even though his statements were already on record, and he's been more than happy to talk to podcasters and write a book about what he knows. This basically rules out Boagni's claims linking Rafael Perez, David Mack, Amir Muhammad, and Suge Knight together. When Mario Hammond was deposed in 2005, he not only repeated his story from 1998 about Suge Knight confessing to him in jail that he had Biggie killed, but now he added further details to his story that he didn't give back in 1998. This included David Mack as being the one Suge hired to kill Biggie, along with Mack's friend Amir Muhammad. Mario Hammond's story changing cast a huge doubt on his credibility. The addition of Mack and Muhammad to his new story was attributed to the fact that Mack and Muhammad were named publicly multiple times since his first statement in 1998, like in the 2002 documentary Biggie and Tupac, in the book Labyrinth, and in numerous media reports and articles covering the case. So Hammond was clearly adding info that was widely talked about to help support his claims. Hammond also claims he has pictures of Suge Knight with David Mack and Amir Muhammad, yet he has never produced any such photos to anyone. Detective Fred Miller, the police officer who worked the case, said in his 2005 deposition that he couldn't find any connection between Suge Knight and Amir Muhammad, which basically rules out Hammond's story and a link between Suge Knight and Amir Muhammad, the suspected killer. In his 2005 deposition, Michael Robinson admits he never met Amir Muhammad in 1997 and had identified him in a photo lineup because he had guessed and picked half of the pictures. He also admitted that his 1997 statement was hearsay. Robinson's admission that he made it all up rules out the identification of Amir Muhammad as the suspected shooter. To top it all off, what completely discredits Michael Robinson and his claims about Amir Muhammad was explained by Amir Muhammad himself in his 2004 deposition. This is when he detailed the botched attempt by former FBI agent Phil Carson to have Robinson and Muhammad cross paths. In 2003, Phil Carson sent Michael Robinson to Amir Muhammad's house whilst wearing a wire in the hope he could obtain a confession. But when Robinson knocked on Muhammad's door, Muhammad did not recognize Robinson, and thinking he was a stranger, Muhammad told Robinson to leave. The next morning, Carson and Robinson attempted again to confront Muhammad, but Muhammad rang 911 and police came to escort Robinson away, with records of calls by Muhammad to the local police who were unaware of the FBI operation. This clearly shows that Robinson and Muhammad did not know one another, and again completely discredits not only Michael Robinson, but also former FBI agent Phil Carson. It's important to point out that in 2005, after all of these depositions, the first lawsuit by the Biggie estate against the LAPD was declared a mistrial. The estate filed an amended lawsuit against the LAPD in 2007. Waymond Anderson was the key informant in the second lawsuit, and he gave a deposition in 2007. Oh, and I forgot to mention, when Michael Robinson and Waymond Anderson gave their statements back in 1997, they were both locked up together at Corcoran Prison. Apart from his 1997 lie about being in prison with Suge Knight, in 2001, Anderson also made a bunch of claims about crimes David Mack and Rafael Perez had supposedly committed. First, Anderson clarifies that in 1997, he and Michael Robinson worked together to give statements in the hope Robinson would get some money, since Robinson was a paid informant. This admission of lying rules out his first statement and Michael Robinson's statement. Secondly, Anderson recants his claims about Mack and Perez in 2001 and says he lied. Apparently, they were real crimes, but he had inserted Mack and Perez into them at the request of Kenneth Boagni, who was also locked up with Waymond Anderson briefly at Corcoran Prison. Apparently, Boagni had told him to make claims about Mack and Perez to help Biggie's estate with their lawsuit against the LAPD, and that the estate would give him a share of any compensation if they won. It's important to note the lawyer for Biggie's estate, Perry Sanders, took on the case in July 2001. That's 2 months after Anderson and Boagni were locked up together. So Sanders couldn't have proposed such an idea to Anderson or Boagni during the time they were locked up together. So Waymond Anderson was proven to be lying in his first story. The second story with Robinson, they both admitted were lies, and the third story with Boagni was unfounded by the LAPD, which he recanted, which is probably why the second trial by the Biggie estate against the LAPD was dismissed in 2010, given the main informant they had left admitted everything he said was a lie. But you can understand why Biggie's family would pursue a case against the LAPD when there is a police officer, Russell Poole, claiming other police officers' involvement in Biggie's death, as well as finding out there are statements from informants to help make their case. Sounds like a home run for them, to not only get compensation but also justice for Biggie. So what's the conclusion? Well, with respect to the statements from informants, Greg Kading had statements that not only make sense and are credible, but the key informant identifies herself as being involved in the murder.
Therefore, these are good, usable informant statements.
However, the informant statements Russell Poole had were not only ridiculous, but they were clearly made up and were either proven to be or were admitted by the informants themselves to be lies. This basically means those statements have zero credibility and are useless. Also, the fact that 3 of those informants were all locked up together at some point supports the idea that they were scheming together to come up with these stories.
So after looking into the informant statements, Greg Kading's theory is still holding up, whereas Russell Poole's theory is not.
I guess the most obvious thing that people miss here is that if Suge Knight had a bunch of known killers hanging around him as part of his gang affiliation, why on earth would he ask some crooked cops to perform this murder for him instead? No matter how corrupt Mack or Perez were, there is no way Suge would entrust something like this with shady cops over his own gangster crew. That makes no sense at all. These gangsters were shooting people on a daily basis and quite often able to get away with it. So why would the Biggie scenario be any different? Whilst we've seen now that the informant statements can help put a case together and also take people in the wrong direction, sometimes what's even more useful to police investigating a crime are the statements given by witnesses. People that actually saw something only have to recall what they saw, which was the actual event itself, not recall what they heard or what happened before or after the event. But witness statements are not always useful either. Join me for the next episode where I look into the various witness statements from individuals that were there the night Biggie was shot. Let's see if they corroborate any of the informant statements we've gone through in this episode and see how they help or don't help each theory.